I never knew I had a son. Not once in my life did I believe I had a boy out there somewhere carrying my blood. The call came through at exactly 9:23 on a Thursday morning in November. I remember the time because I glanced at the clock on the wall right as my phone started vibrating against the wooden workbench. I was out in my woodshop behind the house in Saskatoon, smoothing down the leg of a tiny chair I was building for my granddaughter's dollhouse. Sawdust hung in the air. The radio was low. It was an ordinary morning. Then everything shifted. "Is this Michael Donovan speaking?" "Yes." "Mr. Donovan, this is Sergeant Rebecca Collins with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I need you to come to Regina General Hospital. There's been a situation." I set the sandpaper down slowly. My stomach tightened. What kind of situation? There was a pause, the kind that stretches just long enough to make your heart beat harder. "Sir, we have a deceased individual. A young man. His identification lists you as his father." The workshop, which had always felt like my refuge, suddenly seemed too small. The walls felt closer. "There's got to be a mistake," I said. "I have 2 daughters. I don't have a son." More rustling on her end. Paper moving. "Mr. Donovan, the deceased is Anthony Donovan. Born April 3rd, 1991. You are listed as the biological father on his driver's license. Emergency contact. 1991. The year Angela left me. The year my life cracked open. I'll need to see identification when you arrive," she continued gently. "But he had your phone number written on a piece of paper in his wallet. We do need someone to come down." My hands had started trembling without me noticing. "I'll be there in 3 hours," I told her. The drive from Saskatoon to Regina felt longer than it ever had, even though I had made it dozens of times before. Angela and I divorced in 1992. The marriage had been short and poisonous from the start. 18 months of fighting, suspicion, slammed doors. Then one day while I was at work, she vanished, took half the money from our joint account, and disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. I never heard from her again. She never once mentioned being pregnant. But April 1991, that would have been right before she walked out. The hospital morgue in the basement was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature. The air felt heavy. Sergeant Collins was waiting for me at the entrance. She looked to be in her 40s, with tired but kind eyes, the kind you see on someone who has witnessed too many tragedies. "Mr. Donovan," she said quietly, "thank you for coming. Before we go further, did you know you had a son?" "No." My voice sounded empty even to my own ears. "My ex-wife and I divorced in 1992. She never told me she was pregnant." Collins nodded slowly. "He was found in his apartment 2 days ago. It appears to be suicide. No note. But we did find some documents we think you should look at first." She guided me into a small office. On the desk sat a plain manila envelope. "We cannot legally give you these," she explained, "but we can show them to you. Afterward, if you can identify the body, we will need your signature on some paperwork." I opened the envelope. My fingers would not stay steady. Inside were photocopies. A birth certificate. Anthony David Donovan. Born April 3rd, 1991. Regina General Hospital. Mother, Angela Marie Donovan. Father, Michael Christopher Donovan. My full name. There were additional documents beneath it. Adoption records. At first the words blurred together. Legal language. Dates. Signatures. Then the meaning snapped into focus so sharply I felt dizzy. Angela had put him up for adoption 3 weeks after he was born. She had forged my signature on the consent forms. The adoptive parents were listed as Jonathan and Melissa Pierce of Calgary. "Mr. Donovan?" Collins's voice sounded distant. "Are you all right?" "She gave him away," I said, barely able to breathe. "She forged my name and gave away my son." "I'm very sorry," she said softly. "Are you ready?" No. I was not ready. I would never be ready. The attendant pulled back the sheet, and I saw my own face. 32 years younger. But there was no mistaking it. The same nose. The same jaw. My mother's gray eyes. There was even a small scar above his left eyebrow in the exact spot where I carry one from a childhood hockey accident. My son. My knees gave out beneath me. Collins caught my arm before I hit the floor. "It's him," I whispered. "That's my son." I signed forms I did not truly read. They handed me another envelope. This one had been found in Anthony's apartment. It was addressed to me. I could not bring myself to open it there. Instead, I drove to a Tim Hortons and sat alone in the parking lot with the engine off and the windows fogging around me. Only then did I tear it open. The letter was dated 1 week before his death. Dear Michael Donovan, I do not know if I should call you Dad, Mr. Donovan, or just Michael. I have written this letter 47 times before this version. My name is Anthony. I am your son. I found out 6 months ago. He wrote that he had taken one of those DNA ancestry tests for fun, the kind where you spit into a tube and mail it away. He was not searching for me. He said he had good parents. Jonathan and Melissa Pierce raised him in Calgary. He described a happy childhood, university, becoming a teacher, a stable life. He had no complaints. But the test connected him to cousins on his biological father's side. They told him about me, gave him my name. He hired a private investigator. That investigator uncovered the adoption records, discovered Angela had forged my signature, confirmed I never knew Anthony existed. Then came the part that made my stomach turn. Mr. Donovan, my mother did not just give me up. She sold me. According to the investigator, a lawyer named Victor Chun handled the adoption. Now retired, living in Vancouver. When confronted, he admitted paying Angela $15,000 for the baby. Then he charged the Pierces $45,000 in legal fees and arrangements. It had been a black market adoption. Anthony confronted Jonathan and Melissa. They were devastated. They believed everything had been legal. They thought the high cost was because Angela wanted to ensure he went to a wealthy, loving family. They had been trying to conceive for 8 years. They were desperate. They are good people, Anthony wrote. They did not know. But the deeper he looked, the worse it became. Victor Chun had not been acting alone. A nurse at Regina General Hospital named Catherine Brooks had identified vulnerable women, young mothers struggling, often unmarried. She would approach them, offer money, promise their babies would be placed with affluent families. Angela had been one of them, and it did not end with Anthony. The investigator uncovered records of at least 32 other infants sold through this network between 1988 and 1998. 32 babies treated like livestock. Chun kept coded ledgers hidden at his lake house. Detailed records, payments, names. Anthony reported everything to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police 3 weeks before he died. They've opened an investigation, Anthony wrote. Chun and Brooks will be arrested soon. Then the tone of the letter shifted. But here's what I cannot live with, Mr. Donovan. He told me he had tracked Angela down. She was living in Edmonton. 2 months earlier, he had gone to see her in person. She did not recognize me at first, he wrote. When I told her who I was, she laughed. He said she called it a smart decision. $15,000 had been good money in 1991. She told him she had used it to start over somewhere new. He asked her why she forged my signature. Why she never told me. She said you would have tried to keep me. She said you were the type who would have fought for custody, who would have made it messy. She said it was easier to erase me. Erase me? Anthony asked if she ever wondered about him. She said no. He asked whether she knew how many other babies were sold through that network. She said she did not keep count. But she admitted Catherine Brooks approached her again in 1993, asking if she knew other girls who might be interested. Interested? She was not sorry, he wrote. Then his words softened. Mr. Donovan, I am a good person. The Pierces raised me well. I teach high school English. I coach soccer. I volunteer at the food bank. I have friends. I have a girlfriend. I have a life. I could see him as I read it. A classroom. A whistle around his neck on a soccer field. My son living a life I never knew existed. But I cannot stop thinking about the fact that I was a transaction, he continued. That my birth mother looked at me and saw money. That 32 other children like me were sold. That you never even knew I existed. He said he kept wondering who he might have become if things had been different. If he had grown up knowing me. If he had known he had sisters. If Angela had not decided both our futures without asking either of us. I have tried to move forward, he wrote. I really have. But it follows me. Then came the part that shattered me. I wanted to meet you. I drove to Saskatoon twice. I parked outside your house. I could not make myself knock. What do you say to a father who does not know you exist? How do you introduce yourself to sisters who have no idea they have a brother? He wrote that he needed me to know the truth. That he had existed. That he had been real. That Angela had taken him from me. I gave everything to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They have the evidence. Chun and Brooks will face justice. Then, at the end, I am sorry I was not brave enough to meet you face to face. I am sorry you are learning this way. I am sorry for all of it. Tell my sisters I wish I had known them. Anthony. I sat in that Tim Hortons parking lot for 2 hours, reading that letter over and over until the words blurred together and my coffee went cold. Then I called Sergeant Collins. "I need everything," I told her. "Copies of what you found. The investigation files. All of it." "Mr. Donovan, I cannot just." "That was my son," I said. My voice was shaking, but I did not care. "Someone stole my son and sold him. And apparently they sold 31 others. I need to know everything." There was silence on the other end. "Come back to the station," she finally said. "I will see what I can do." Over the next 3 weeks, I learned more than any father should ever have to learn. Anthony had done meticulous work. Victor Chun had been running what looked on paper like a private adoption agency. In reality, it was a baby-selling operation. Catherine Brooks, who worked in labor and delivery at Regina General Hospital from 1987 to 2001, had been feeding him clients. Vulnerable women. Young, poor, unmarried, frightened. Catherine would approach them late in pregnancy, usually during the 3rd trimester. She would frame adoption as an opportunity, a solution, but she sweetened it with money. Anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the situation and the baby's health. She told them the money came from wealthy adoptive families who wanted a smooth process. Many of the mothers believed they were doing something noble, giving their child a better life, receiving financial help to restart their own. They did not know Chun was charging the adoptive families 3 to 5 times what he paid the birth mothers. They did not know that many of those families believed everything was legal. They did not know Chun falsified paperwork, forged consent forms, and bribed officials to keep the operation quiet. Angela had been among the earliest cases. She took the money and vanished. But she was not the last. Once the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had Anthony's documentation, the case accelerated. Victor Chun was arrested in December. Catherine Brooks followed in January. They were charged with human trafficking, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The final count was not 32 children. It was 37. 37 babies sold between 1988 and 1998. Anthony had missed 5 in his own research. 5 more lives bought and sold. I tried to track Angela down. I needed answers. I needed to stand in front of her, look straight into her eyes, and ask how she could sell her own child like a used car and then laugh about it years later. But she had vanished again. The address Anthony had uncovered was outdated. She had moved on without leaving so much as a forwarding note. Maybe that was a mercy. I honestly do not know what I would have done if I had found her. Instead, I poured everything into arranging Anthony's funeral. I met the Pierces for the first time in a quiet coffee shop in Calgary. Jonathan was a retired engineer, the kind of man who measured his words carefully. Melissa had spent her life as a librarian. Both were in their 60s now. Both looked hollowed out by grief. We did not know. Melissa kept repeating, her hands wrapped tight around her cup. We did not know it was illegal. We just wanted a baby so badly. "I know," I told her. "And I meant it. You gave him a good life. I can see that." Jonathan looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "He talked about contacting you," he said quietly. "He was afraid. Afraid you would hate him for waiting so long. Afraid you would blame us." "I could never hate him," I said. "And I do not blame you. We planned the funeral together like 3 people bound by something none of us chose." I met Anthony's world in pieces. Emma, his girlfriend, a nurse with red-rimmed eyes and hands that would not stop shaking. David, his best friend since 3rd grade. Fellow teachers from his high school. Members of the soccer team he coached. They all said the same thing. He was kind. He was thoughtful. He showed up for people. But over the past 6 months, something had shifted. He had grown quiet. Withdrawn. He stopped attending gatherings. Pulled away from friends. Emma broke down when she spoke to me. "He would not tell me what was wrong," she said. "He just kept saying he was dealing with family stuff. I thought someone was sick. I never imagined. Neither did I. I also had to tell my daughters. Caroline, 35, living in Toronto. Rebecca, 32, in Vancouver. I had raised them after my second marriage fell apart when they were still little girls. They knew about Angela in the broadest sense. They knew I had been married before. That was all. Sitting them down and explaining they had a brother they would never meet was the hardest conversation I have ever had. Caroline sobbed for hours. Rebecca reacted with anger. "Why did you never look for him?" she demanded. "I did not know," I kept saying. "I did not know he existed." At the funeral, Jonathan and I stood side by side at the front of the chapel. I spoke about the son I never had the chance to raise. The son who had my face and my scar and my name. I spoke about the 36 other children who had been bought and sold like merchandise. I spoke about a system that had failed everyone involved. Anthony's death is a tragedy, I said, but his life mattered. His investigation forced the truth into the light. Because of him, Victor Chun and Catherine Brooks are facing justice. Because of him, laws are being reviewed. Because of him, other families may finally get answers. After the funeral, I realized I could not simply return to my old routine. I hired a lawyer. I wanted to find the other 36 children. They deserve to know. It took months of digging, paperwork, and careful conversations, but we located 22 of them. Some already knew they were adopted. Others had no idea. Some had spent their entire lives wondering about their origins without ever imagining the truth was this ugly. We formed a support group, a place where they could speak openly, share what they had discovered, and begin to untangle the mess left behind. One of them, Olivia Hernandez, told a story that echoed Anthony's. Her birth mother had been paid $12,000. Her adoptive parents had paid $48,000. She only learned the truth at age 28 when her adoptive mother confessed on her deathbed. Another, Christopher Langford, had not been so fortunate. He grew up in an abusive household. His adoptive parents treated him like property they had purchased. When he learned he had literally been bought, he said it explained everything. Not every story was bleak. Some had loving adoptive families and stable lives. Some expressed gratitude for how they were raised, even while grieving the deception that surrounded their beginnings. But every single one of them deserved the truth. The trial stretched on for 8 long months. Victor Chun was 74 by then. He showed no remorse. His lawyer argued he had provided a service, that he had connected children with loving homes. Catherine Brooks, 68, claimed she had been helping desperate women, offering them choices. Neither one acknowledged the damage. The families torn apart. The children raised without knowing who they truly were. The birth mothers manipulated. The adoptive parents deceived. In March of 2024, Victor Chun was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Catherine Brooks was sentenced to 12 years. It did not feel like enough. It never could. No number of years behind bars would return 37 stolen childhoods. Still, it was something. A line drawn in the sand. Later, through a civil suit against Chin's estate, there was a settlement. I used every dollar of that money to establish the Anthony Donovan Foundation. I needed his name to stand for something more than a tragedy. The foundation focuses on reforming adoption laws across Canada. We advocate for transparency, for oversight, for protections that make it harder for predators to hide behind paperwork. We provide support for families separated by fraud or coercion. We work to prevent illegal adoptions before they ever happen. So far, we have helped reunite 47 families. Not all of them connected to Chin's network. Some were caught in other schemes, other lies, other quiet transactions disguised as compassion. Every time we help someone uncover the truth about where they came from, I think about Anthony. Last month, we scattered his ashes into the Saskatchewan River, near the university where he studied. The current was steady that day, the sky wide and clear. Emma stood beside me. The Pierces, too. My daughters. A few of Anthony's friends. Several of the other children who had been part of Chin's network. Strangers once, bound now by the same wound. I said a few words. I told him I was sorry we never met face to face. Sorry I never got to be the father he deserved. But I told him I was proud. Proud of the man he became in spite of everything stacked against him. Caroline read a poem she had written. Rebecca brought her guitar and sang a song Anthony loved. We watched the ashes drift across the water until they disappeared into the current. Of course, the what-ifs came. What if Angela had told me? What if I had raised him? What if he had grown up with his sisters under the same roof? But I have learned something over the past year. What-ifs trap you in the past. Action moves you forward. What matters now is making sure it never happens again. Making sure the next Anthony does not grow up wondering whether he mattered. He mattered. All of them mattered. Not because money changed hands. Not because of the lies. But because they were human beings who deserved to know their own beginnings. I keep Anthony's letter in my wallet. The paper is soft now at the folds from being opened so many times. Sometimes I take it out and just hold it. It is the closest thing I have to my son's voice. My daughters visit more often these days. We talk about him openly. We say his name. We refuse to let him become a shadow. Caroline named her newborn son Anthony Michael. She told me our family needed to carry that name forward. The foundation continues to grow. We have helped push legislative changes in 3 provinces. We have funded DNA testing services for adoptees searching for biological relatives. We have developed educational programs that teach what ethical, transparent adoption should look like. None of it brings Anthony back, but it ensures his life was not reduced to a transaction. His pain uncovered truth. His courage forced justice. His existence changed laws. Sometimes people ask if I am angry at Angela. The honest answer is yes. She forged my name. She sold my child. She erased him from my life as if he were a mistake. But I am also angry at the system that allowed it. Angry at Victor Chun, who preyed on vulnerable women. Angry at Catherine Brooks, who abused her position of trust. Angry at agencies that failed to question irregularities and failed to protect families. Being angry at one person is simple. Carrying anger at a broken system is heavier, but it is also more useful. If you are reading this and you are adopted, or if you placed a child for adoption, you deserve the truth. You deserve to know your own story. If that story includes deception or exploitation, you deserve justice. And if you are considering adoption, do your research. Make sure the process is legal, ethical, and transparent. Ask questions. Demand proof. Insist on documentation. Do not let desperation turn you into an accomplice in someone else's trauma. And if you are holding on to a secret about a child given up, about forged signatures, about a parent who was erased from a birth certificate, understand this. The truth has a way of surfacing. It always does. And when it finally breaks through, the damage is far worse than it would have been if honesty had come first. For most of my life, I believed I never had a son. But for 32 years, somewhere in this world, a young man named Anthony Donovan was living and breathing. He carried my eyes, my last name, my blood. He stood in classrooms teaching students how to think. He coached soccer on cold evenings. He laughed with friends. He was deeply loved by the family who raised him. He should have been loved by me, too. That absence sits with me every single day. Not just the loss of Anthony himself, but the loss of time. The birthdays I never celebrated. The graduations I never attended. The ordinary, quiet conversations between father and son that never happened. The chance to guide him, to argue with him, to embarrass him, to be proud of him in person. Angela took that from both of us. And the system that allowed her to do it stole from 37 families in total. But Anthony's story did not end in silence. Every time we help reunite a family, that is Anthony pushing back against what was done to him. Every time a law changes because of our advocacy, that is Anthony's voice echoing in a courtroom. Every time someone uncovers the truth about their own beginning, that is my son still making a difference. That is the promise I made to him. Not revenge, not bitterness, just this. Making sure the next father gets the phone call while his son is still alive. Making sure the next child does not have to die to be heard. Making sure that truth, however painful, is always chosen over convenience. Because Anthony taught me something I did not understand before. It is not only money that destroys lives. And it is not even the lies, though lies cut deep. What destroys people is erasure. The act of pretending someone never existed. The theft of possibility. The stolen chance at relationship, at love. The only way to fight erasure is to remember. To speak names out loud. To tell stories that some people would rather keep buried. So I tell Anthony's story, and I will keep telling it. Until adoption laws are strengthened everywhere. Until ethical, transparent practices are the standard, not the exception. Until no frightened mother is exploited. Until no father is deceived. Until no child is reduced to a transaction. That is what a father does for his son, even if he never had the opportunity to hold him. Even if the only inheritance he received was a letter and a cause. Even if all that remains is a name, a memory, and a vow to make it count. Anthony David Donovan. April 3rd, 1991, November 14th, 2023. My son.